I'd like to say good evening to everyone, and I'd like to call to order the regular City Council meeting Monday, July 6, 2020, which is a virtual meeting. It is currently 8 p.m. At this time, I would ask all those who can, please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam City Clerk, I know we confirmed a quorum, but I'd like to formally confirm with you that we have a quorum for this evening.
Yes, Mayor, we do have a quorum of 6. The only one that is running a little late is Councilmember Gardner. Everyone else is present.
Thank you very much. At this time, do we have any agenda additions, deletions, or amendments? Hearing none, I'd like to move forward to the citizen participation.
Okay, we've got a few for this evening. I got a total of 22 comments submitted.
Okay.
So start with the first one. Good evening. I am asking for you to take into consideration the effects a private partnership would have on Bowie and residents like myself and my children. I'm sorry, this one is from Kelly Seaton from District 2. My son asked if he could go to a stick and puck, which is just a hockey pickup or practice session, at Piney Orchard, a Blackbear group owned. I told him okay and that I would drop him off. Seeing as we normally pay about $10 for a stick and puck session at Bowie, I never thought about the price. Well, after going online to register him, I was in shock. $65 for a 2-hour session, $40 for a 1-hour. Needless to say, I had to inform him that we couldn't pay that kind of money. He was upset as he hasn't been on the ice in over 3 months, but he understood. Unfortunately, and I didn't tell him this, but if Bowie is no longer a community-run facility, we will priced out of ice sports altogether. We are a middle-class family that work very hard to provide. My husband takes any side job possible to pay for hockey as it is. When the ice arena is sold and prices go up, hockey will no longer be an option for my child. The Bowie Hockey Club has made it affordable for kids to enjoy and try ice hockey, a sport that a lot of kids are priced out of. Without a city-run facility, I believe a lot of people will be forced to abandon the sports they love. Shouldn't all kids be given the opportunity to explore all types of sports? Sports are so important for children and their development. My son, until he found hockey, was socially inept and had zero self-esteem, in part to all of the failed sports he had tried. When he started playing hockey, that changed. He excelled in it, his self-esteem shot up, and he made friends. As a freshman at Bowie High this past year, he was proud to play for his school. That too will no longer be an option for him, seeing as they currently practice at the Bowie Ice Arena. Having this outlet has been vital to his development, and to be perfectly honest, I'm not sure where he would be without it. Additionally, you will be taking away the other community programs such as affordable summer camps and public skating and lessons, something that is affordable and has been offered in the city for over 50 years. As if stopping construction wasn't enough, now we are going to sell off the rink to be run for profit at the cost of Bowie residents. This isn't what Bowie is about, or at least I didn't think so, until now. Please do what is right for everyone. Okay. Next one is from Sarah Earwicker from Montclair Lane. Hello. I have been a longtime resident of Bowie for the last 37 years, and I am writing about the Bowie Ice Arena. I am asking that the council take the recommendation from the city manager's report to keep the ice arena city-owned. If the city sells to a private corporation, the city will still be required to fund a significant portion of the repairs while relinquishing control. If the city has to pay for repairs anyway, we should be able to keep control of the ice arena. Please consider what will be best for our city and the residents, and that will be to maintain control of the ice arena by not selling to a private corporation. Thank you. Next one is from Franklin Matthews. Dear Bowie City Council members, here we meet again about the state of ice in our city. After reviewing the proposals that have been presented and some detailed search about the two accepted proposals, I hope that it is clear to the council that the only way to responsibly proceed is with the city continuing to operate the ice arena. Although I am still very disturbed with how the new arena was abruptly stopped, we must all move forward, but let's do so with a decision that doesn't essentially eliminate ice in the city. Thank you in advance for making the most prudent and fiscally responsible decision. Next one is from Aaron Shuttler in District 1. I am writing this letter to ask that you do not vote in favor of entering into a PPP for the Bowie Ice Arena. You have already devastated the ice community by pulling the rug out from beneath them regarding the Iceplex. Now you are tightening the screw on them by wanting to bring in a company from outside our community to run our ice rink. These companies have zero loyalty to our community. Since some of the council members have given one of the reasons to stop the Iceplex was the amount of money the city would have to give to support it every year. If you move forward with the PPP for the ice rink, I will request that the council start looking into a company that they can enter into to run the city gym and the new courts you want to build on Church Road. You all know the numbers. The city gym loses a lot more money every year than the ice rink does. So if the council votes for the PPP for the ice rink, then they need to start to figure out how to enter into PPPs for all the facilities that loses money. The two proposals are still asking for the city to supply the money for capital improvements. The improvements to the ice rink that are needed per the report submitted by the city staff in 2017 would cost $22,400,000. The mayor stated in his response that he posted on Facebook on May 19, 2020, after canceling the Iceplex, that Blackbear Sports Group, an industry expert, informed him that it would cost approximately $3 million for the repairs. Why would the mayor take advice from the largest and closest competitor to our ice rink? BBSG had too many reasons to count to want to shut down the Iceplex project. It would be like taking advice from Walmart about building a newer and better Target. How is $3 million going to be enough to repair and or replace the site issues, parking lot, metal panels, structural system, roof, mold removal, refrigeration slab, locker rooms, restrooms, sprinkler system, HVAC system, and electrical? The proposal is still stating $3 million for the repairs. They gave an example of improving Piney Orchard, which was built in 1991 to our 1971. Out of the 15 ice rinks that they have purchased in the last 5 years, they have been in business, all but 3 of them were built in the 90s. One in 1975 with a remodel in 1985, one in 1984, and one in 2003. So I am not sure they are experts in rehabbing rinks that were built in the early 70s, or how they can be experts when you have only been in business for 5 years. The city will lose programmatic control for our resident-based programs. We will lose a staff with 92 combined years of specialized ice arena experience. Please do not vote for this PPP. Next one is from Robert Lively from Idle Court. I wish to submit the following brief comments pertaining to the Bowie Ice Arena. Number 1, PPP. I am adamantly opposed to entering into a partnership with a private firm. These firms' primary focus is on profit and protection of their bottom line. Once the public entity enters into such an agreement, it relinquishes control of its public-owned resource to the private partner, and the public sector loses any control over operational costs, user fees, or user requirements. One need look only to transportation PPPs in the region. I-395 out of DC, US 66 out of Northern Virginia, or the Dulles Toll Road, to see where these do not work in the public's best interest. Number two, non-residents. Talk of not allowing non-residents is of concern to me, and I believe may show a lack of understanding of not only skating activities, but also of team sports in general. Team skating, it is impossible to conceive any scenario in which team skating, whether ice skating teams or hockey teams, can participate in any type of league play by denying non-resident teams onto the Bowie ice for games or competitions. Also, to deny any team from including a non-resident on their roster may well result in denying the resident members of those teams the ability to field a team. We have had years of experience in addressing this issue with team sports, and controls have been developed and implemented to successfully manage such situations. It must be recognized that there will be those who attempt to game the system, requiring the stringent controls are in place and are enforced. Recreational skating. General admission for use of the ice arena for recreational skating has always included a fee structure by which non-residents pay a higher price for skating. Non-resident users will not deny the use of the rink to Bowie residents, and further will eliminate a higher source of income. Number three, alternate use of facility. That recreation has been included in the title of the proposed task force causes me to pause and wonder if there are those who think that the ice arena should be considered for some recreational activity other than skating, such as basketball. I hope that this is not the case. The ice rink was built in 1971, and there has not been a single sheet of ice added for the benefit of this user group. When Fox Hill Lake stopped freezing over many years ago, the city lost its only occasional outdoor sheet of ice. Now compare this to basketball resources. In 1996, when that 10-year recreational master plan was written, there were basketball courts in 3 community centers in the city and nearly 30 outdoor courts. In the time since, consistent with that master plan, a new multi-court gymnasium has been built, and a second one is being planned on the site where the first new sheet of ice in 20 years was to have been added. Next one is from Christine Nickel from Rosewood Drive. Dear members of the Bowie City Council, my name is Christine Nickel, and my 4 daughters skate on the Herbert Wells figure skating team. I am writing to ask you to please keep the Bowie Ice Arena in public hands. For years, my family has both competed and taken lessons at the Bowie Ice Arena. Our private coach, who is a Bowie resident, will often meet us there to teach my children and encourage their love of skating. Our coach used to be able to teach my children at many rinks in the area, but currently she can only teach us at Wells and Bowie. Let me explain why. It turns out that she does not have the expensive credentials that would allow her to teach at the privately run rinks. You may not be aware of this, but there are 2 main tracks in ice skating. USFS programs are more competitive, expensive, and elitist. ISI programs are more family-friendly and affordable. Currently, both our programs at Wells and your programs in Bowie operate as family-friendly ISI programs, programs that have room for skaters of all ages and whose price tags are within reach. There used to be more ISI programs in the area, but they are slowly being rerouted as private owners realize that it is more profitable to run an expensive elitist program. I fear that if you turn the ring operation over to a private vendor, the ISI program at Bowie will also disappear. And with it, the access to skating, which is currently granted to the average person in Bowie, will become limited to only those whose pocketbooks are large enough to pay the bill. As the mother of 4 skaters whose husband is in the Navy, we greatly appreciate that Bowie is affordable and we consider it our skating second home. Please don't turn over operation of the rink to a private entity that will focus on their bottom line and not what is best for the citizens of your community. Next one is from Angel Lopez. Council, please do the following 2 things. Keep your promise and build a new rink to not cost millions of dollars to the taxpayers of Bowie. And 2, keep the current rink as city-owned, city-operated. I do not agree with a long-term private partnership. Costs will increase, public events will become less available, etc. My husband is a Bowie hockey alumni dating back to 1970s. We both have been raised in Bowie. He moved to Bowie in '72, and I moved here in 1984. Next one is from Sarah Schaefer from District 2 resident. Dear Council and staff, I know you're probably sick of seeing my name on these emails. However, I feel the need to continue so you know we are not just going to go quietly into the night. I am writing to ask you, please, please, please reconsider building the Iceplex on Church Road. The amount of taxpayers' waste that is going to occur is insane and uncalled for. It isn't even about ice anymore. It's about the right thing to do. If at this point we cannot convince you of that morally correct thing to do, then at least please keep the current Bowie Ice Arena as a city-owned and city-operated facility. It has been in the city's recreational activities for 50 years, and it should remain as such. Again, first and foremost, I would love for you to make the Iceplex as the first choice, but please, at minimum, keep the current rink a city facility. Furthermore, please, 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 under no circumstances, do not allow the Blackbear Sports Group to get their claws in our community. It would be the worst possible decision, even more so than stopping the Iceplex construction. Thank you for your time, and please do right by your residents. Next one is from Jason Seaton, District 2 resident. Good evening. I am writing this letter to express my concerns with the current plans for the City of Bowie Ice Arena. I am a 17-year resident and plan on continuing to raise my family here. It is our hometown and we love it. However, recent events that have occurred in regards to the ice arena have me greatly concerned about the future of my city. The waste of taxpayer money was obviously a great concern, and we requested answers to some basic questions, none of which have been answered. There should be transparency, and if you vote either in favor or against, you should be able to explain to some extent your reasoning, especially when millions of dollars are in question. When the project was canceled, I honestly didn't think that things could get worse for the ice community. Apparently, I was wrong. It is my understanding that there is interest in selling or leasing the rink to be privately owned and operated. This would be disastrous. Ice sports would become unaffordable for many, and the community programs that are offered, like lessons and summer camps, would cease to exist. We are a middle-class family, and the only way my son can experience hockey is because of the affordability of a city-run facility. Once it is sold for a for-profit organization, we will be priced out. Please don't forget about the ice community. Thank you for your time. Next one is from Keith Richards and family. Good afternoon. My name is Keith Richards, and I reside at 2622 Kennison Lane in Bowie. I am emailing you to request that you keep your promise and build a new ice arena. This contract needs to be upheld as to not waste any more of my or my neighbor's tax money. Keep the ice rink city-owned and operated. I am appalled at what this city council has done. Good day. Next one is from Sarah Roseman from Cambridge Drive. I am asking the City Council to please consider doing the following two things. Keep their promise and build their new rink to not cost millions of dollars to the taxpayers of Bowie. They need to uphold their contract to make things right for the taxpayers. And keep the current rink as city-owned, city-operated. I do not agree with a long-term private partnership. Costs will increase, public events will become less available, etc. Thank you. The next one is from Kim DeRocher from Arc Court. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council et al. My name is Kim DeRocher, and I am a City of Bowie resident for 50 years. My husband and I decided to stay in Bowie and raise our family because of everything Bowie has to offer. I have been proud to call Bowie our home. We currently reside in District 3 on Arc Court. We have been following the ice rink issue very closely since the inception of the project many years ago. I am respectfully requesting that you review the true and accurate data released by the city staff regarding the ice rink and other entertainment sports facilities in the city. The city will not benefit from a public-private partnership for the ice rink. Please keep the rink city-owned and operated. Thank you. Next one is from Peggy Brow from District 2. Dear Bowie City Council, again, asking that you live up to your promise of building the new ice arena, or at minimum, keep the old one Bowie owned and operated. By selling, you offer the chance of completely eliminating the sport of skating from Bowie. This is the only sport my daughter with special needs excels at. Maybe you can't or don't skate, so it's difficult to understand. If at some point skating is no longer available, you are forcing us to take our business out of the city we live in. May as well take our patronage of other businesses out of Bowie too if you can't support all of the people of Bowie. Is that what you are hoping for? Sell a facility and lose residents to other cities? Please consider all people and maintain ice skating in Bowie. Thank you. Next one is from Cheryl Richardson. Dear City Council, my name is Cheryl Richardson and I live in District 1. I have been a City of Bowie resident for 35 years. I do not agree with a public-private partnership for the Bowie Ice Arena. One of my very realistic concerns is that a private partner will not care to keep ice sports and recreation affordable. One of the two bidders, Murray Gunty of Blackbear Sports Group, has already shown he will capitalize whenever opportunity presents. Their ice rink, Piney Orchard, recently was the first ice rink in the area to open when the state was starting to allow select businesses to reopen. Do you know what they did? They took advantage of that fact and charged $65 for a 2-hour stick and puck session. For a family like mine with 3 kids, that's a $195 cost. That's outrageous and unacceptable. Yesterday, I sent the council and the city staff a very long and detailed email explaining why both RFP applications should not be considered. To recap some of those key points. Number 1, Murray Gunty Blackbear Sports Group skillfully crafts their answer to section 4.1 stating, the respondent has no prior civil or criminal litigation beyond ordinary course, insured civil litigation, none of which is material, and neither the respondent nor its personnel have been judged guilty in such litigation in the past 10 years. There have been some financial settlements by the respondent and affiliates in which no guilt has been admitted in order to avoid the cost of litigation. The use of the words none of which is material catches my attention. Who are they to determine what is material here? The fact is, all business matters related to Mr. Gunty, regardless of industry, are relevant here as it speaks to his character as a businessman. Also, his one company, Super Shuttle, closed down recently, and there is litigation pending between TransDev On Demand Inc. and Blackstreet Capital Holdings over the terms of the transaction. Also, when I read the last sentence of their answer, I interpreted it to mean the respondent and its affiliates had some legal troubles that had they gone to court would have been found guilty and probably would have been negatively impacted financially. So we settled instead. Number two, another skillfully crafted sentence is this one. In addition, an affiliate of the respondent, without admitting responsibility, voluntarily accepted an administrative order from the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. Deeper research here showed unregistered broker-dealer activity, undisclosed OPO fees, unauthorized use of fund assets, and using fund assets to make political contributions are just a few of the concerning issues that took place. Number three, Jack Vivian is one of John Burley, Everything's ICE partners. He's currently involved in a legal issue with ISI. His management company was evicted from the Taylor Sportsplex in Michigan, also a city-owned facility like the Bowie Ice Arena, for owing the city back rent and utility payments. Number four, Leon Lakai is the president of the 11 Group, another partner mentioned in the Everything ICE application. His business has changed names several times. Past newspaper articles on Mr. Lakai have expressed concerns with diverting funds, refusing to account for funds, lying to board of directors, and breaching contract. Another article discussed how he failed to pay contractors timely for work that had been completed at the St. John Ice Arena and Fitness Center. If you need more information, I encourage you to really review all of the sources on my original lengthy email that goes into significant detail about all of this. Based on this information, neither group is a good fit and should not be considered for a PPP with the Bowie Ice Arena. I agree with the city's first recommendation to keep the existing ice arena under city ownership and management. According to their document, the Bowie Ice Arena operates under a high level of cost recovery as compared to other resident-centered recreation services. And the Bowie Ice Arena currently operates at less than $330,000 net loss FY19, making it the least expensive significant recreational service offered by the city behind the Playhouse. Based on this information, the council should choose to invest in the current facility, not offer it for PPP. The facility has been in the city for 50 years. It operates under a high level of cost recovery. It's generated a lot of positive. Ran out of time on that one. Okay. The next one is from Terry Rogers, the president of the Greater Bowie Chamber of Commerce. Good evening, Mayor Adams, esteemed City Council, staff, and Bowie citizens. On behalf of the Greater Bowie Chamber of Commerce, we wish to express our profound gratitude for your inclusion of the Chamber of Commerce in the city's amended budget. With this infusion of financial support, we look forward to instituting programs that will strengthen the ability of our small and micro businesses to fend off the ravages that the COVID-19 pandemic has wreaked upon this valuable city commodity. Aside from 1983, the year of its founding, the Greater Bowie Chamber of Commerce is facing the most critical and defining period in its long and illustrious history. In recent months, as many of our local businesses have been forced to shutter, they have faced revenue, income, job instability, and credit challenges, which has resulted in lost tax revenue to the city. This loss in business and sales tax revenue has actually increased the tax burden on our city's already challenged financial budget. Our small and micro businesses are operated by some of the most innovative, diverse, and talented business owners anywhere. In many cases, they chose to invest their life savings and creative energy to turn their dreams and passions into a critical component of the vitality of this great city. Their contributions are no less than outstanding. We have come to love these businesses. We need these businesses to survive. They are important to us. And your Greater Bowie of Chamber of Commerce, with your assistance, will be in a better position to help them be better able to deal with the crisis situation that they are struggling through. The programs, webinars, and resources that we will bring to bear will not only help them transition to open, but we will arm them with the tools and knowledge so that they can stabilize and sustain their operations into the future. Again, thank you for your thoughtful efforts to grant us the resources necessary to get our beloved businesses back on solid footing. The Greater Bowie Chamber of Commerce is open for business. Next one is from George Albaugh from Manship Lane. I am a city resident. I live in the M section on Manship Lane. I support the city keeping the existing ice arena and shouldering the costs connected with its proper maintenance. You've already wasted millions of my tax dollars by pulling the plug on the new rink. Don't yet know the total cost of that miscarriage of governance. The meter is still running. City ownership of the rink will keep the cost of skating down for city residents. Next one is from Jim Sishelman of Quintet Lane. Dear City Council members and Mayor Adams, I am writing to express my desire to be a member of the Ice Arena and Recreation Facility Task Force. I am a newly sworn-in member of the CRC and am a longtime user of the ice rink, serving as a hockey parent for nearly a decade and a team manager for several years. Additionally, I am a 23-year resident of Northridge who has lived in the city for most of the previous 45 years. Though I am no longer participating in the Bowie Hockey Club due to the fact that my son has aged out of the program, I am presently serving as volunteer president of the Bowie High School Hockey Club and expect to fulfill that role for as long as the team needs a volunteer. As a new CRC member, I am not necessarily bound to or limited by their history or their recommendations for the ice arena. I do know, however, that there is at least one other member of the CRC who is willing to serve, whose judgment I trust. If I am not seen as a potential member, Carl Stemmer would do an excellent job looking out for the best interests of our children. As a hockey parent, however, I am intimately involved with the needs of the club and the shortcomings of the current ring and feel that I would be a valuable member of this new task force. What is not clearly understood by non-members is that the youngest ages, the BHC, is made up by a much larger contingent of city residents than the older ages. As the athletes age, they commonly move on to other sports or clubs, and the club membership takes on a much more regional character. Additionally, without a second sheet of ice, our teams are forced to share their ice with other teams, mostly due to the sheer size of club membership. This user situation is extremely rare and serves to retard the growth of our players. As kids grow older and get more interested in serious competition, they look elsewhere, knowing that most Bowie teams just cannot compete with other regional clubs. This is a drawback that can only be remedied by a larger facility. I bring this up only because I am not sure that this has been properly articulated during the process that has resulted in cancellation of the new ice arena. At any rate, it is clear that the PPP is either a poor or completely unrealistic alternative. I have read the city manager's report and agree broadly with its findings. I would urge this council to reconsider their cancellation of the ring and at the very least suggest that agreeing to a PPP based on the proposals received would be a grave error, serving to compound the damage already inflicted on the users. I do not write this message to lay blame or to tell you your business, but I do try to state my intentions and opinions so that they are clearly understood. If you feel that I would be a fit for this task force as a member of the CRC or a community advocate and former user, at least you know where I stand on the issues. Thank you for your time and consideration. Okay, the next one is from Dina Kunert. Dear City Council, I live in the M section of Bowie behind Bowie High School. I would like to restate my desires about the Bowie Ice Arena. I desire that the City of Bowie continue to operate the Bowie Ice Arena, including necessary capital improvements with city staff, and that we do not enter into a PPP with any of the mentioned firms. None of the firms present a benefit for the City of Bowie. The full-time staff members have 92 combined years of specialized ice arena experience, and the part-time staff have 90 years. Please keep the Bowie Ice Arena operated by the City of Bowie. My family and I have enjoyed the Bowie Ice Arena for lessons as well as social time and exercise time in the past. We want the excellent staff, services, and other amenities to continue. Thank you. The next one is from a group of residents from District 1, 2, 3, and 4. Good evening, Mayor Adams, Mayor Pro Tem Councilmember Adrian Boffo, Councilmember DeFore Wolfley, District 2, and Councilmember Roxy Ndebumalu, District 4. The financial decision that you made on Wednesday, May 21st, 2020 to cancel the $25 million contract with Costello was the responsible action to make for all of the citizens of Bowie. We appreciate you for doing your homework and due diligence and looking out for the well-being of Bowie and its citizens. Kindly, concerned citizens of District 1, 2, 3, and 4, Carrie Bridges, Millie Hall, Michael Brown, Destiny Collins, Joanne Marshall Hobbs, Robin Choice Woodson, Melissa Richardson, Karen Williamson, Brenda James, Barbara James, Darrell Brown, Vicki Brown, Sonia McLean, Kevin Doby, Puria Jackson, Viola Underdew, Gail Elkins, Maceo Choice, Monica Roebuck, Jasmine Hall, Aliyah Jackson, John McCoy, Nicole Bell, Lynn McGill, Michelle Howard Lawson, Dominique Choice, Richard Alexandra, Greg Green, Narvell Hall, Jacqueline Herbin, Craig Herbin, Thomas Proctor, Vilma Jackson, Cassandra Brooks, Patricia Verdon, Chris Lawson, and Denise McKenney. Next one is from Karen Geary. Mayor Adams, City Council, and staff. My name is Karen Geary, and I lived in District 2 of Bowie for over 23 years. Please keep the Bowie Ice Arena city-owned and city-operated. I don't agree with allowing a long-term private partnership, as costs will almost certainly go up. Current valuable staff could be let go, and public events and access could become an issue. The Ice Arena has been a wonderful amenity for the City of Bowie for almost 50 years now. There were over 19,000 paid admissions to the current rink last year. Why give that up? It's bad enough that the plans for the new Iceplex were canceled, even after showing that it would be the only amenity in Bowie to be able to turn a profit. It's unfair for council members to say that the ice rink does not serve the entire resident population of Bowie. Every amenity does not have to serve the entire population. The current rink serves not just the Bowie Hockey Club and the Bowie ISI team. It serves thousands of paid admissions for recreational use. Again, over 19,000 in 1 year. I don't use the senior center, the dog park, existing courts, skate park, etc., but that doesn't mean they are any less valuable. The entire reason I chose to live in Bowie was the wide range of amenities the city has to offer. Someday I may use the senior center. Someday I may use the dog park or courts. It's nice to know I have options. To say an amenity isn't worth having because everyone doesn't use it is unfair and plain ridiculous. If the city council is saying that our amenities have to serve the entire resident population, why isn't the gym, senior center, etc. turning a profit? Because not everyone is using them. If each amenity has to serve the entire population, then I guess we will have to stop funding every amenity in Bowie. Why is the ICE community being held to different standards than other groups and that other groups in Bowie aren't? The ice rink was only given $300,000 in subsidies last year compared to almost $800,000 for the current gymnasium. ICE attendees already pay 67% of operational costs, where the courts only pay 16%. Why is the ICE arena held to different standards? Why is it this council is willing to waste $8 million of my taxpayer money with nothing to show but a pile of dirt? Studies given to the previous council showed the new Iceplex could turn a profit. I suggest that council start reviewing past documents and council minutes and stop wasting Bowie citizens' tax-paying dollars and treat all of the groups with the same fair standards. The next one is from Pam from Kitmore Lane. City Council, keep the promise and build a new rink to no cost, millions of dollars to the taxpayers of Bowie. At this point, if you want ICE or not, they need to uphold their contract to make things right for the taxpayers. Please keep the current rink as city-owned, city-operated. Let them know you do not agree with a long-term private partnership. Costs will increase, public events will become less available, etc. And the last one is from Alexis Cunningham. Many cities have supported African Americans who've been victims of police brutality and painted Black Lives Matter on streets. Seeing how we live in a predominantly African American county, and Bowie is also a predominantly African American city, it would be nice if our city could also paint Black Lives Matter on a main street. I am a lifelong resident. What can we do to make that happen, or is this already in the works? That's it. That was the last comment received.
Thank you so very much to all of our citizens for their staying engaged and participating. At this time, we'll be moving on to the city boards and committees. What I'd like to ask is that the council would look at voting on the entire slate of appointments, reappointments, unless someone has some concerns about any of those listed. But again, if not, I'd like to be able to just vote on the entire slate.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to move to approve all the members on the city committee reappointment list.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, reply with aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
All opposed, the same favor? Hearing none, motion carries. Any council announcements? I would like to just take a brief moment and say, on behalf of myself and my entire family, thank you to all of the citizens of Bowie, the city staff and personnel, and to the members of the council for all of your support, your love, and your prayers during our time of loss. I do want to say thank you, and it truly has been supporting us and getting us through this time. So again, I just wanted to take a moment to truly say thank all of you so very much, and I think it reflects the beautiful city that we all live in. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. This is Councilmember Harrison. I do have just a couple of announcements.
Go right ahead, Councilwoman.
Thank you. Just wanted to share that almost 79% of Bowie households have completed the 2020 census. We are grateful for the strong participation. However, The remaining 21% of households must be counted in order for Bowie to receive its full share of the billions of dollars in federal funding that will be distributed to communities over the next decade. It's about money, power, and data. The census data determines the amount of funding, the political representation our community receives. So it's critical to complete the census now. It takes about 10 minutes. You can respond online, by phone, or by mail. Your data is protected and confidential. It cannot be shared with law enforcement, immigration agencies, or housing authorities. Responding now will minimize the need for the Census Bureau to send census takers into the community. Let's all do our part to make sure Bowie counts. Learn more at www.2020census.gov. My final announcement, I just want to say thank you to Councilmember Ndebumadu for her partnership and leadership on us working together and partnering with Southlake, NAI Michael Company, Mr. Tony Perez on providing lunches, smoothies, and coffee. And the lunches and smoothies were courtesy of Tropical Smoothie Cafe, Mr. Clement Troutman. And the lunches and smoothies were provided to our hometown frontline heroes at Bowie Health Center, Larkin Chase, Tribute at Melford, Hartfield, and Brookdale. We wholeheartedly thank them for all they do, for their service, sacrifice, and their passion for what they do to help our residents. We are eternally grateful. Thank you.
Thank you so very much for that, Councilwoman, and for keeping us on point on making sure not only we take care of the census, but the work that you and our other councilwomen are doing to make sure to take care of our frontliners. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Hearing none, we'll move on to the city manager's report.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council. I have no report tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager. At this point, we will move to the consent agenda.
I'd like to move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second that we accept the consent agenda. Any discussion? Hearing none, it's been moved and properly second. All in favor, reply with an aye.
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 Any opposed with a nay? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you. At this time, we'll move to the old business, the adoption of Resolution R3720. City staff, would you like to provide any additional feedback?
Good evening, Council. This is John Henry King, your Economic Development Director. Resolution 37-20 was provided first to Council on June 15th. It contained a broad plan that through Council discussion and action on Ordinance 620 to appropriate money for a business recovery program rendered this resolution an obsolete document. Therefore, staff is recommending that you vote no on this resolution and then move to discussion of your first new business item, which is a new resolution incorporating the results of your discussion from June 15th. That's all.
Thank you so very much, Mr. King. Any discussion or questions from staff, at least from the council for staff? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion at this time.
I'd like to move to reject Resolution R37-20.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second that we reject under old business adoption of Resolution R3720. All in favor, respond with an aye.
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 Opposed, the same favor. Hearing none, the motion carries. Thank you. moving to new business. Adoption of Resolution R 49-20. I turn it over to staff.
Good evening, Council. I'm still John Henry King, your Economic Development Director. Resolution R-49-20 proposes a Bowie COVID-19 Recovery Assistance Program. The contents of it were developed initially by request of Council through the Economic Development Committee. Subsequently, on June 15th, Council had a vigorous and wide-reaching discussion as to what they wanted to do and how they wanted to fund things, which resulted in specific items being funded. Resolution R-49-20 takes the results of that discussion and breaks it down into three pieces: assistance for our individuals and families, assistance for Bowie businesses, and captures it all in a more succinct resolution without crossouts. And staff recommends that you adopt Resolution 49-20.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt Resolution R-37 I move to adopt Resolution R-49-20.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second. Any discussion? Hearing none. It's been moved and properly second. Call for the vote. All in favor, please respond with an aye.
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 Opposed, the same favor? Hearing none, the motion carries. Thank you. We move to Hall Station annexation discussion. Again, I turn to the city staff.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. Joe Minert, our planning director, is going to take the lead on this. He's out there virtually. Joe, go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. I'm Joe Minert, the planning director for Bowie, and here tonight to present some information related to the Hall Station annexation petition. This request was received from the residents of Hall Station back in November, and since that time, staff has been reviewing the petition and its contents. We also identified an issue that we felt was something that we needed to explain to council about, and we discussed that in your backup memo, which is a 5-page long memo, which analyzes the request as well as some of the provisions of state law that apply to annexations. One of the things that we noted in our memo on the second page is that if the annexation of Hall Station were to take place, there would be property that would be not within the corporate limits of the city that would be entirely surrounded by the city boundary. And that's not permitted by state law. So one of the things to consider is whether to bring those additional properties in at the same time, which involve the library, the retail areas, and the credit union. One of the things that staff looked at also was whether or not the boundaries of the city could be adjusted in this area to provide for a better, more regular boundary and eliminate duplication of services to that Hall Road community. And so staff provided a scenario labeled as Figure 1-2 in the memo, which is a recommended boundary adjustment that would bring the city boundary all the way to from Hall Road all the way down to US 301. And so staff identified the criteria for approving an annexation, which includes looking at the assessed values of properties, and you have to have a minimum of 25% of the assessed values. Also, you have to have a minimum of 25% of the registered voters in the annexation area. It's clear to us that from an assessment standpoint that there would be enough assessed value in the Hall Station community to be able to annex the larger area that we've identified as figure 1.2 in the memo. However, when it comes to the second criterion, which is the voter criterion, there are 170 registered voters within Hall Station, and the petitions have been received by only 45 of those voters. And so it's a very narrow margin. The margin of 25% is met, but it's a very narrow margin. And one of the suggestions that we would have for council's consideration as you discuss this tonight is the option of going back to the community, to the organizers who have put together the petition, and ask them to obtain additional signatures from registered voters to be able to put it that threshold well above the 25% minimum. And that's critical because under Maryland law, there can be a referendum request if only 20% of the registered voters sign a petition to have a referendum. So what would be really important would be to have a majority of registered voters if we can possibly obtain that. And that would help the city in its recommendation to do the broader area to square off the boundaries of the city. So that would be our input to you tonight. I believe Ms. Hawkins is here. She is the proponent, the organizer of the petition. And it's really up to council to direct staff. Our recommendation is that you support the figure 1-2, the expanded annexation area, which will resolve the boundary issue and will allow the city to and encourage the community to go back and get additional signatures from registered voters. And that would conclude the staff presentation on this item, and we'd be happy to answer any questions council may have.
Hey, thank you so very much. If I could, any questions from council at this moment?
Yes, this is Councilman Wolfley.
Go ahead, Councilman.
Quick question for you on the issue of the timing. I noted in one of the documents that there was a financial delay in the value of annexation. Can you speak to that, please? And can you speak to anything we can do on the timing side that would allow us to match up the tax revenue with the expenses so that we're not, I think it was 80,000 or so that we were off in the first year of annexation. Can you speak to that, please?
Yes, sir. Councilman Wolfley, the finance department had put together an analysis, a preliminary analysis based on revenue expenditures to serve the community versus when the revenues would come in from the tax assessments. And there is a lag time from the time a property is incorporated into the city. And so essentially the cost of providing the services on a monthly basis would be about $17,000 per month. We just ran a scenario where if the city introduced the annexation by the end of September, the annexation would become effective sometime before the end of January 2021, with 5 months remaining in the fiscal year. So there would be an outlay immediately of city funding, and we estimated that based on the 17,000 figure to be about 85,000, almost $86,000 of the city services being funded to the community. No revenue would be received during fiscal 21. And so it would be our expectation that the city would not see the positive revenue effect until fiscal 22. This is a rough analysis. It is largely dependent on how quickly the assessor's office picks up on the change in boundary and assesses the property with the corporate tax included. And then there's also the time that it takes for people to have that money put into escrow and So it's a kind of a complicated scenario. It's not easily, you can't say that it's accurate. So we're kind of giving a conceptual picture, but in the end, and we provided the table on at the top of page 4, in the end, the net change, when you look at the overall annexation, if we take it according to figure 1.2 all the way down to US 301, the city would be gaining a revenue of over $225,000 annually. And that's just the revenue coming in, not the expenses going out. So obviously the expenses to the residential sections, not so much to the business sections. So there would be, what we would normally do for an annexation is we prepare a more detailed fiscal worksheet to provide to you as the annexation resolution is introduced. So at this point, that's about all we can do is give you that conceptual picture of what we think will be happening. So the timing is really, if the council preferred to delay this somewhat, that's also an option. So we're providing this information for your direction.
So is there anything that we can do in terms of timing such that if, for example, we say that the annexation would occur, say, July 1st of next year, or March or January or some future date, that would allow us to sync up so that we're not out of sync with the expenditures and the revenues, so that we would get the revenue at the same time that we're expending money for the services?
Yes, I believe the council can establish an effective date when you pass the resolution. Maybe the city attorney might want to provide additional input on that subject, but I believe the council does have the control to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Actually, let me follow up with a couple additional quick questions and comments. So it seems to me, Joe, from the comments that you made, that the proposal as it stands right now is not one that we could accept, correct? Because of the creation of an enclave, correct?
That's correct. As it is currently proposed, we really could not annex the community of Hot Station without creating the enclave, which is not permitted under state law.
So something has to be done, which would be either go back and include the enclave, which changes the numbers, or include the enclave plus the additional land that's between. They are basically running along 214. I mean, it's just a little spit of land, so I guess it would just clean up the borders. So that would need to do one or the other, but something has to be done different than the original proposal, correct?
That's correct. And I think what's key to anything moving forward is for the petitioner to obtain additional signatures of registered voters in the community, because as I mentioned, we're right at the margin now with the 45 registered voters. There's 170 registered voters in the community. And it's really important, because people move in and out constantly. Especially if we're going to delay the annexation, it's really important that we have a good number of those well above the 25% minimum.
And another quick question for you. Is there any history with this section trying to be annexed before? My memory is failing me. I don't recall it was a contentious discussion, but I think it's one that's come up before. Can you speak to that?
Councilmember Wolfley, my recollection is that this annexation of this community has been discussed off and on for probably 10 years, and there just has never been enough community support. There had never been a petition, to my knowledge, and so it's taken a long time for the proponents of annexation to really work that through their community, working through their HOA. But it has a long history of, I think, moving in this direction.
With that in mind, I just want to voice my concern. The primary concern I have is that we may be annexing people who may not be all that interested in aggregate in being annexed into the city. And I'm a little concerned that if we've got this very narrow margin, if we have a long history on this, that I think we need to make sure that there is a solid commitment on the part of the community. I certainly don't want to bring in folks who are not interested in it, and that's, I think, not who you want or how you want to acquire additional, constituents right off the bat, that they come in and 3/4 of them aren't all that fond of being part of the new team, if you will. Thank you.
Hey, Mr. Minor, this is Michael Estev. Do you mind if I jump in real quick?
Go right ahead, Michael.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just want to make sure I'm doing my math correctly, Mr. Minor. So looking at the analysis, the total tax base of the property that we would seek to annex is just over $52 million. But there's a note that that is inflated because of the value of the library, which is tax exempt. So when you factor out the library, you're looking at, just over 47 million. Doing the math, at the 43-cent tax rate, we would only be bringing in about $16,900 a month, which is $200 less than the estimated cost of services. And that's with the tax increase. Without the tax increase, I'm looking at a revenue of $15,800 a month, which is further below the estimated cost of services. Am I doing the math wrong here?
Well, this information was prepared by the finance department, and that note qualifying the library is just my way of making a point of saying that the library does have an assessed value. We just didn't take the time to back it out of those numbers that the finance department prepared. And I believe it's part of the business, the 13,000 assessed value of the business line item. And I haven't calculated or have not gotten any information from finance on what that net change would be. So I can't comment on your math.
Not a problem. I'll reach out separately to Mr. Matthews. But yeah, just doing the back of the napkin math, it looks like this is potentially a net loss in revenue to the city. But along those lines, and this is probably a question for Mr. Stefanos, these properties are predominantly all, high density housing condo units. If I'm not mistaken, we would not provide trash, recycling, or snow removal for these properties. So their tax rate would likely go up, but they wouldn't be seeing improved services, at least not the kind of more expensive generic services we provide. So I wanted to follow up with that. Does that impact the estimated dollar amount of the services that we'd be providing?
Well, again, you're getting into a question that I don't think I can answer as the planning director. There is a public street there. It's Hall Station Drive. So there would be some level of maintenance of that street. Also, I believe trash pickup is done in townhouse type communities, and I think that is part of what has been discussed here with the residents. And so it may be true that not all city services would be provided to the same extent, but I think that those major ones like trash pickup and road maintenance, I think would be included here.
Okay, let me check with staff on that. I appreciate that, Mr. Meyer. Just want to make sure that they're actually gaining something of value by joining the community, and that the city is also not potentially, losing revenue through an annexation. So I will definitely follow up with staff on that, and I appreciate your taking the time to answer questions, Mr. Minor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman and staff. Any other council members have any questions?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, please go right ahead, Councilwoman.
No questions from me. I just want to say thanks to Joe for putting all this together and bringing this to the council so that we could truthfully have a discussion about this. I know that this has been, kind of an ongoing discussion that's been off and on for a couple of years now. So I'm really, really happy that we were able to work with Ms. Hawkins on this petitions and bring it forth to the council to have an engaging discussion on and hear everybody's thoughts. and what they thought about, the annexation and how we should move forward. So this is pretty useful information. I'd like to see a little bit more of the numbers fleshed out, and I know we don't have that today because it's kind of preliminary, but kind of to Michael's point and everything that Councilman Esteve mentioned, I'd love to know the answers to that. So I guess we can work with Mr. Stefanos as well as Byron to get those answers to move forward.
Well, we'll get the answers for you.
Thank you, Mr. Locke.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from any of the other council members? If not, thank you, City Manager. And if you could work with us as we go through, and we'll through Mr. Stefanos and through Byron and others. I think we have some good questions that we could clear up as we move forward as we had this discussion. So thank you very much.
Well, Mr. Mayor, one thing though, or do you want to move forward? We want to continue to work on it and bring it back at a later date? What's your direction in this respect?
I think at this point, from what I'm hearing from the council members, they would like to hear some additional information. And I will go back to the three who made the major comments. I believe Councilman Wolfley, is that correct? You'd like to hear more information?
You bet. That'd be appreciated. Thank you.
Okay. The same with you, Councilman Esteve?
Yeah, if our questions could be answered at our next council meeting, if possible, that would be really helpful.
Yeah.
We'll have the answers then.
Thank you, sir. All right, appreciate that. All right. Moving on now to the ice arena. I think at this point, I'd like to commend city staff and all, and the city manager. I think you did a very, very detailed analysis of the RFPs and what your recommendations and thoughts were. So at this time, I'd like to move to the council members for any questions they have. And since it's in District 3, I'd like to start off with Councilman Adrian Boafo, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll start off by thanking the folks who applied. Obviously, your interest in the city of Bowie is greatly appreciated. I also want to thank the folks who were outside today as well, making their voices heard on where the next decision needs to go on this issue. The only thing that sticks out to me that is of extreme concern and I hope staff can speak to this in the next couple of minutes, are some of the numbers here. So, we've gotten 3 applications. I know one has been disqualified, essentially. But on average, when you talk about the CIP improvements during their first 2 to 4 years operating, we're talking $4 million, $3.1 million, $3.5 million, 3.6 on average is how much they say it will cost to reshape and fix the entire arena. We were quoted in 2017, $15 million, right? This is a huge jump 3 years later. So interested in hearing more about what's going on there.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to, we could take a moment and allow Mr. Mears to make a presentation of his findings that could most likely answer all these questions. And that way we don't, the public who doesn't have the document in front of them can benefit from that also.
I think you're on mute, Mr.
City Manager, I appreciate your point. The one concern I have is that it could be so detailed, there's so much. If he could give us a general presentation of it, because I really would like to get to the point of where the council members can address the questions. I do believe you did a great job of presenting it.
Well, he's prepared to provide a summary, Mr. Mayor, if you'll give us 10 minutes. Proceed. Councilman
Wolfo, do you mind if we pause for a moment to do so?
As long as my other colleagues don't have any issues with this.
No issues from me, Mr.
Okay. And we good. Let's move forward without him.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So when the staff received direction in May to prepare a request for proposals, it utilized a form from Massachusetts community to construct, operate, and maintain a facility as a template. Staff also obtained a lease document used by the Maryland National Capital Parks and Planning Commission for the Ice Gardens in Laurel as a reference document. As part of the advertised RFP, the city provided that lease as an example document through also provided a thorough project overview and building overview to the potential respondents. It provided the report for the 2017 due diligence evaluation of the ice arena, the Allen Pond Master Plan, the city's sustainability and climate action plans, as well as a listing of the city's ice arena assets, existing ice arena contracts, and the submission requirements and evaluation criteria for submitted proposals. The city ice arena was made available on June 17th to interested parties to personally visit, inspect, and tour the facility. The city of Bowie received several follow-up questions after the site visit, to which the city responded to all of the RFP recipients. On Friday, June 26th, the city received 3 proposals, 2 of which contained all of the required forms with submittal. Upon review, only 2 of the proposals met the minimum evaluation criteria, which were Everything Ice Management and Blackbear Sports Group. A staff review committee read the proposals and scored them based on the submission and evaluation criteria on a score of 1 to 5. Scores of 1 were not advantageous to the city of Bowie. Scores 2 and 3 were advantageous to the city, and scores 4 and 5 were very advantageous to the city of Bowie. Everything Ice Management was the higher scoring proposal with a score of 3.288, and Blackbear Sports Group had the lower scoring proposal of 2.0613. Weighing heavily on the evaluation was the ability of respondents to address the infrastructure needs of the 50-year-old facility, which is in need of major rehabilitation. Blackbear Sports Group provided not advantageous responses to these criteria, offering a small degree of capital investment and discounting longer-term infrastructure needs despite seeking a 50-year term. Everything Ice provided an advantageous response to the 2017 facility analysis, concurring with most items outlined in the 2017 evaluation. And it was also stating that some of the items would need additional review. In order to provide a recreational amenity to the citizens of Bowie and serve local recreational groups, proposers were asked to describe the programmatic uses of the facility. Everything Ice Management was more responsive in this area, including a schedule that included local users. However, the Blackbear Sports Group proposal was less clear, leading the reviewers to infer whether local use would be benefited by their operation. Neither proposer provided a detail about facility rental rates. However, both proposals implied that rates would increase. In order to determine the benefit for the city of Bowie would be entering into the public-private partnership, proposers were asked to demonstrate those benefits in their proposals. Benefits proposed were expanding availability from 10 months to 12 months, and environmental benefits of the facility were cited and would be available once the capital improvements were made to the subfloor and mechanical equipment. Neither of those benefits would be distinct to a private firm. If the city were to undertake those, it would also realize the expanded availability and environmental benefits if the repairs were made to the arena. The Blackbear Sports Group proposal states the benefit of bringing hockey showcases and tournaments to the city. This proposed benefit contradicts previously communicated City Council objective of making city facilities available primarily to Bowie residents. Each proposal also makes a financial case as a benefit to the city as well. Blackbear Sports Group proposes an annual payment of $15,000 to the city of Bowie, and Everything Ice Management proposes $100,000 per year, later going to $200,000 per year. Each of the proposals offers a capital investment in the ice arena as well. Blackbear Sports Group indicates an investment of $3.1 million over 3 years, and they request 33% of the capital expenditure be matched by the city, capped at $1 million. Everything ICE indicates an investment total of $7,491,500 over 7 years. They include a request for a 50% capital expenditure match from the city. By these firms not funding the capital expense, the city is not wholly benefited from the private investment. Overall, the staff reached a couple of recommendations. The first, that the city not enter into a public-private partnership with either firm and continue to operate the facility, including necessary capital improvements with existing staff. Or, if the city council is determined to enter into a public-private partnership, then staff recommends the city enter into negotiations with Everything ICE Management. So your question was asking about the difference in regards to the estimate associated with the 2017 evaluation of the facility and the cost valuations that were provided by each of the proposers in terms of what they thought the costs were. Certainly the city does not have the benefit of the knowledge of either of the proposers in regards to how they came to their conclusions in regards to the costs. In the evaluation of the proposals, there were some of the elements that were listed in the 2017 estimate that were not included in the different proposals that would somewhat account for what the costs were. And I think it's a little bit challenging to know really what the costs of the project are going to be. These have not been designed. They have not been fully vetted. The 2017 analysis was done really, I think, to be providing a worst-case scenario for the city in regards to what the costs were, but it was not a detailed analysis from costs. It was a general overview.
Thank you. So just for clarification, what we're saying is that the 2017 evaluation was the worst case scenario, right? And I know a lot of us weren't here during that study, right? So no. But essentially what we're saying is that, well, first off, the proposals do have some detail into what it will cost, right? My concern is that 15 million and 3.5 are two drastically different numbers, right? 3.5, I think no one would disagree with me here, but if we knew the number was 3.5 going into this situation and not $15 million to repair an entire building, this would have been a totally different outcome, right? So my concern is really, I'm assuming city staff also has a recommendation for the 2015 study, but looking back in the past, doesn't seem that that was a recommendation that we were supposed to be moving forward with. So my question really is, those are two drastically different numbers. Three entities that have nothing to do with each other all came up with the same estimate of a number. So what's going on here? And I'm not putting the blame on you guys. I'm just trying to get some clarification as to why are there so many drastically different numbers?
Well, I think part of the challenge that we have associated with this, we did not provide either of these entities a great deal of time to do an evaluation of the costs going into this as well. They had one day that they were able to come onto the site. I can't speak to their ability to put the costs associated with that on their proposal. In regards to the costs associated with this project, I think this is something that the staff feels that we do need to have some more information on in regards to getting the repairs that are necessary to this facility designed, to have a focus on that and develop a cost estimate that we can bring to the city for them to evaluate.
Mr. Mayor, that's all my questions.
Thank you. I'd like to move to other council members. Councilwoman Ingrid Harrison, do you have any questions you'd like to ask?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, I don't have any questions because I put my trust in the city staff's recommendations, and I am not supporting any of the organization's request for proposal responses. because based on what the city staff has presented, neither of them present a distinct benefit that can be brought by the private sector that the city of Bowie does not currently or could provide. So I will not be supporting any of those organizations, especially Blackbear, based on several discussions I've had with city residents. They don't put their trust in that company, and they have loudly spoken and have said they do not want a public-private partnership. They want the city to continue to manage and maintain the facility. I'm going with the residents, and I do not support any of the public-private partnership organizations. So that's my response. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilwoman. I'd like to now move on to Councilman Michael Esteve.
Hey, Mr. Mayor, I appreciate it. Yeah, so real quick, Dan, could you just kind of elaborate a little bit for me? In reading through the details and some of the proposals, one of the concerns that I have, and this is something that staff seems to contemplate in their analysis, is that in the applications we received, there seems to be a consistent glossing over, or perhaps maybe an egregious optimism with some of the proposals as far as the capital costs that the rink will ultimately face. Looking at the details of some of the proposals, it's almost as though some of the applicants are basically saying, well, we think we can get a couple more years out of the roof, so we're really going to give the smallest possible figure for what it's going to cost to replace, or make small aesthetic changes to the roof, or patch a couple of holes, when even in their own analysis, they acknowledge that the thing's 47 years old. You know what I mean? It just feels like consistently in these applications, we're seeing a pattern of, well, we can squeeze a couple more years out of this, so we really don't need to contemplate significant capital repairs to, whatever the item is. And that makes me incredibly nervous that we could enter into a potential partnership, be liable for half the costs of improvements, and have it turn out that, in fact, the original estimates we got from our previous consultant years ago were closer to the actual number than some of these, frankly, extremely optimistic numbers we're getting now. Could you comment on that, Mr. Meyer?
Certainly. I think one of the things that we have to look at in regards to the facility is the entire life cycle of the facility in terms of the costs. And where we are today, the facility is 50 years old, and it's at the point where it needs a major rehabilitation to it. So if we're looking at having a long-term life cycle associated with this, we have to look at the long-term life cycle costs associated with the project. So each of the proposals requested to have a 50-year term for their facility. And to look at any building, any structure going out into the future, particularly one that is already 50 years old, we need to contemplate how we look at those infrastructure costs over that long term. Each of these proposals was really focused on nearer term rehabilitation costs and not looking at the long-term view of that asset. The city of Bowie is going to be here in 50 years. The city of Bowie is going to have Allen Pond Park, and the city of Bowie is going to have to ultimately be responsible for the condition of that facility over the long haul. So I think the real challenging point for the staff in terms of looking at this from both of the proposals was neither proposal was fully committed to the capital and was looking for the city's help and assistance in regards to providing that capital. And if that request for capital dollars is coming now at a relatively small portion of capital dollars that is contemplated in each of the proposals, what is going to happen over the life cycle of the entire lease? The city had experience with the golf course in recent years where there was a lease agreement that was established that had many years of payments to the city in regards to costs associated with that. And in recent years, with the downturn in golf, the company approached the city and said, revenue is not what it is. We don't have the resources. Would the city consider moving away from having that payment come into the city, which the city agreed to. So anytime we are looking at entering into a third party associated with this, we need to have the oversight of them in regards to the management of the facility, making sure that it is properly maintained over time. And the real question is coming about in regards to a 50-year life cycle. What is that going to look like? These proposals were had a very early emphasis on the capital costs. It was a small amount, but we know there will likely be quite a bit more in the years to come.
Well, and I think you raise a number of good points, Mr. Mears. I mean, some of these applicants have only been around for 2 to 3 years, in this business, which, I mean, don't get me wrong, I completely respect ambition. There's nothing wrong with that. But I do get the sense that there's kind of a pathological over-optimism in some of these figures that they're presenting, given, as you pointed out, this building's 50 years old. When we spoke with years ago, before we even considered contemplating a large investment in a new ice arena, our staff, the folks who are actually responsible for maintaining the existing rink day to day, have been telling us that these major capital expenses were coming down the pike. In fact, it's one of the reasons why the ice arena project was sort of kind of pushed to the front of our recreation investments, because we had so many of these expenses we knew we would be facing, not being reported by an outside private partner, but being reported by the very people who are actively maintaining this facility, and in many cases have been maintaining it for decades. So I appreciate staff's report. I share the concern that the numbers we're getting are extremely optimistic. I think there are certainly some areas where public-private partnerships can be beneficial, but as Mr. Mears pointed out, if you just Google public-private partnerships, there are way more news articles about PPPs failing all over the country, in state and local communities where the governments end up stuck with the bill, the projects never get completed, and you end up in a pretty bad spot. We're seeing this heck with the Purple Line in Maryland, which we thought would be, well underway by now. So, I mean, I think it's easy to throw out PPPs as sort of a cure-all, when faced with a difficult, situation or difficult choice. But given that the applicants are already kind of giving us extremely optimistic figures that don't, to me, seem particularly realistic, I'm just worried that we're going to end up in a situation where we give away control of a legacy amenity to a partner who then, as we have seen before in public-private partnerships we have been in the past as a city, who aren't ultimately able to live up to their very high expectations, and we end up with an inferior product and not saving that much money along the way. That's my chief concern, and I agree with staff's recommendation ultimately that if we want to do this right, we need to do it, in a manner consistent with the goals that residents are asking us to abide by, and in a way that's not going to put us in a more challenging situation down the road.
Hey, thank you so very much for your questions and perspective, Councilman Esteve. Moving on to Councilman DeFore Wolfley. Any questions or comments from you, sir?
Yes, I do, but I'm looking for some information in one of the proposals. So if you can come back to me in just 2 seconds, that'd be great.
Okay, that'll be fine. Would you like for us to wait or move on?
You can move on for a quick. Yeah, go ahead and move on and come back.
Okay, Councilwoman Ambulamadu, are you prepared for any comments at this time?
I also do need another minute, so no.
Okay. I'll wait then on Council Member Wolfley. I would like to take a moment and just say again to the staff for preparing this and going through the process. I'd like to thank them for getting the RFPs out, getting the information back. We do appreciate the effort placed into this. We know that it's important to us as a council as we represent our city. So having said that, Councilman DeFore,
Yes, thank you. You bet. Thank you kindly. So the conversation I want to have on this is twofold, and Councilman Estev touched on this as well as Councilman Boafo as well. The question about the numbers in terms of where we are, what the original H&G report had, and I'm going and looking at Blackbear's proposal because they had a convenient chart so that there's no favoritism over this one over the other one. It's just easier to find than this one, and I remembered reading it. I think this does go to highlight what I suspected all along, which is the order of magnitude for the numbers that we're talking about now vis-a-vis what was originally in place with the H&G report. And Blackbear's, I have their numbers here, in a chart. So they're, site $1.3 million versus $125,000 for Blackbear, and the building envelope was a big big discussion there, $1 million versus $3 million. Architectural systems, another huge number, mechanical systems, and I think that what we see from these projections from both Everything Ice as well as Blackbear is that the numbers that they have are more or less consistent with each other. I mean, nobody is saying it's going to cost $100 and the other one $10,000. I see, $200 estimates plus a $10,000 estimate on the H&G side, and I would say that the numbers that we're seeing from Everything Ice and from Blackbear are more consistent with, I think, the real world and the knowledge base that they come from. And I suspect that H&G did not have the full, shall we say, operational experience to put together an appropriate estimate. And so I do think that these numbers are indicative of what I've suspected all along, which is that the costs associated with maintaining our existing facilities have been grossly overstated, and which is, I think, unfortunate because I think it did lead to a big, long rigmarole that ought never to have happened. And I think that in the situation such as this, to Councilman Estev's point and to city staff's point, if we are looking at numbers where we're talking $3 million or $4 or $5 million, and a PPP is coming in and saying, but I want you to give me half of that, I'm not seeing a lot of benefit for the, the bang for the buck, if you will. At 15,000 or 100,000 in revenue, certainly 100,000, that's a $400,000 difference in revenue, but we still have to lay out the cash on the capital side for the improvements that are needed. So it seems to me that it makes sense to go with the staff's recommendations, but I do think that what this has highlighted is that the real world numbers are, far lower and I think more realistic. And I would say that I would agree that it would be just somebody lowballing you, except that you have two of them doing the same with an imperative to try and get the business, which would suggest that they've got to live up to their agreement. So I think that there's validity to these numbers because they've offered them up as a contract basis. So I don't think a $3 million estimate is what I would consider them making an unreasonable offer, or expectation, I should say, for expenditures on capital. And you compare that to the H&G report, which was in the neighborhood of 22 million, and now you can see where it starts to make a lot more sense to do this sort of project as the life cycle of these various systems warrant, and picking and choosing which ones are most critical at which point in time, whether it's roof first because it's most likely to be problematic. My understanding, notwithstanding the compressor issue we've had this most recently, that nonetheless that the mechanical infrastructure is still serviceable, so maybe that gets postponed. And I think there's something that we could do on the planning side that would allow for us to make some prudent improvements so that we ensure we have a properly modernized facility that takes it on a piece-by-piece basis. So I think that this is very beneficial to the city for this to have occurred so far, and I want to thank staff for the hard work that they did, because I know it was not easy, and also the applicants as well, for their time and effort on it. I'm just not sure that the limited value for us still holding the bag for the capital improvements it really makes a lot of sense. So I guess in a long way around the barn or the ice arena here is that, I think the staff has done a good job on putting these together, the review of these, and I think it makes sense for us to start looking at these, capital improvement projects that are obviously needed, and making sure we put them in queue and moving forward with them using staff to do that. So thank you.
And just to sort of add on to what you were saying in regards to knowing what the actual costs are associated with the project, what the city has is estimates. Those were estimates that were provided 3 years ago by an engineering firm. The ultimate question in regards to costs comes when we design out what we need for the facility to meet the goals for taking care of it, and then put it out to bid, and then the costs come in. I know the cost estimates that were associated with this City Hall building were put out, and when the bids came in significantly lower than what was anticipated. That had to do partly with the economy in regards to how things were going to respond, and that certainly would be the case with this as well. We may be in a position where we're going out for bid at a time when the costs associated for certain machinery or equipment, the costs in terms of where you're trying to get it, are impacted by a tariff or something else that could create some variance for what the estimates are. So the ultimate date that we know what the cost of these are is when we receive the bid for the work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Bowie, for your comments and your questions. Councilwoman Andubamadu, any comments?
Mr. Mayor, I believe Mayor Pro Tem Boaco had a follow-up question.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem, please proceed.
Thank you, Councilwoman. No, I mean, I echo the comments of Councilman Wolfley, right? I mean, the biggest concern for me here is that there are no real numbers. I get that everything that we're doing right now is estimates and studies, but the two numbers are drastically different, right? And so as we go through this process, and as we even talk about the next agenda item, we should be really cautious about making sure that the council and the citizens have real numbers so that we can figure out what direction is best for the city's financial interests. Thanks.
Councilwoman District 4.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I don't have very many comments. The only thing I'll say is that I saw and read staff's recommendation on, the city taking on management for ourselves, which is understood based off of all of the RFPs. But again, my main concern is I see the recommendation, but I don't really see any more information there. So I don't have enough information there on either side, to be genuinely honest with you, to be able to comment on this matter in great detail. I'd like to see kind of what that looks like. If staff is recommending that the city maintain the management or build out the ice rink for ourselves and just kind of go that route, then I'd like to see a little bit more detail behind that full picture and what that can look like. And I understand that staff was operating on a time limit, so I completely understand why it's not there, but I don't think that I have enough information this evening to be able to comment on in great detail on this matter. I'm just a little concerned because there is a gap in the numbers that we're discussing tonight. I don't necessarily feel like we have definitive numbers on any side. I feel like there are a bunch of numbers being thrown about, and there are gaps in between them. So it's very difficult to comment or make a decision or move forward on something when the residents nor the residents nor myself have a full picture and understanding of what those numbers fully and truly actually look like from all sides. So those are my comments. Thank you. Mr. Mayor, you're muted.
Yes, I believe your comments just kind of sum up a lot of the feelings and positions, I think, of what we've heard from a lot of the council members this evening, and that being not really in a position to really make a decision because we seem to have a gap in the numbers and really need to give some thought there. Mayor Pro Tem, since this is in your district, what are your thoughts at this time?
I think the council has spoken in terms of no action needed to be taken tonight, but we should further explore looking at what the CIP improvements are that we need to take care of internally so that we can get an accurate number and move forward, ensuring that the city of Bowie retains control of the ice arena.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I may just add one more comment.
Sure, Councilwoman, go right ahead.
Just really quickly, I would like to see just perhaps a greater level of involvement from the community, and I know that we have.
You froze, Councilwoman.
Oh, can you hear me now?
I can hear you just fine.
I can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I would love to see a greater involvement. I know we're going to discuss that in a few minutes, but a greater involvement with the community, because I think just from everything that I'm seeing, everything that I'm reading, and all the petitions that I'm reading on both sides, there's an equal balancing number on each side in terms of how people feel on one side and how people feel on the other side. So I think a greater involvement in this particular process that we're going over right now is highly necessary for the success of this project.
Can I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, I just have a question.
Yes, go right ahead, Councilwoman.
Councilwoman Ndebumadu, you said that there are residents on both sides of the issues. And what, in regard to the other side, are you finding that there are people that are proponents of a public-private partnership?
Based off of my email records, yeah, I think there are residents who are indeed for the idea of a public-private partnership. I mean, like every issue, you have residents that have one opinion and you have residents that have another opinion. Based off of what I've seen from my conversations, I think that from what I have understood, there are residents who are interested in a private-public partnership, which is kind of how we got here in the first place. And there are residents who are not interested in a private-public partnership and would like the city to maintain control. So what I'm saying is I'd like to see a greater involvement just so that we can come to the best possible solution for the city is really what I'm saying. So, yeah.
So you're saying that we got to the RFP process because of residents, because of what the residents want?
I'm saying that I'd like to see it.
Because you threw away $8 million of taxpayer dollars.
That's your perception, and I respect that. So I'm saying that I'd like to see a greater involvement with residents on both sides so that we can reach a great solution for the city moving forward.
So the 191 letters that Awilda read on May 18th, that's not resident involvement? Is that not enough? Or the ICE community protesting outside of City Hall tonight, or the letters we've received, and so many vocal residents who were against the vote for the ICEplex, et cetera. That's not enough for you all?
Councilwoman Harrison, I admire your passion. I think
I would love to see the letters of the people besides the one letter that we got tonight. How many residents?
If you could just let me respond.
They're in favor of an people.
Just let me respond. I think that's how we can have a respectful and productive dialogue here. I think what I'm saying is that since we are where we are today, I'd like to see on both sides for us to continue to work together so that we can reach a solution that's in favor of the residents and what they would like to see. So no, I'm not discounting any side and saying that no side is enough. I'm not saying that any side is wrong or right. What I'm saying is moving forward, I'd like to see both sides come together so that we can continue to find a solution to move forward. Thank you.
I understand. And I just want
Council-
to, okay, yes, Mr. Mayor.
I'm sorry, I was just going to say that we could probably address this even more when we get to our next item, which is item D, the adoption of a resolution for creating an ice arena and recreation facility task force.
Mr. Mayor, before we move forward, though, I want to make sure it's clear to me what your direction is to the staff on this particular issue is right now. And what is the direction? What are we assigned to do for, and when do you want to bring something back? Or are we tabling this?
At this time, I think what will work best at this time is that we move forward and we look at what we can do in creating an ice arena and recreation facility task force to assist us in gathering additional information.
To be clear,
Open that to our council.
well, just to be clear, there was mention of a CIP program related to the current ice rink. One does not exist presently. Is it the assignment of the council for us to get a valid assessment of the physical condition of the ice rink, and based on that establish a CIP program for either next year, starting next year? I'm going to make sure I understand what the assignment is before we walk away. I don't want assumptions are bad.
Mr. Mayor, if I could jump in, it sounds like what we're saying is that we're going to be giving direction under the next item as it relates to the task force, and probably outline the things we expect them to look into. I got the sense that's kind of where we're heading right now.
Yeah, and that's the point. As we go through this will, as it stands now for item C, we are pausing any discussion on that now, and we're moving to D. And as we go through D, that will help us to decide what direction we will be giving to city staff.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, again, item D. Councilman Estev, would you like to start with some comments for us, please?
Sure. I don't know if staff just wants to read quickly for the benefit of everyone kind of what item D encapsulates. Does staff plan on just saying something for a quick couple minutes about this?
Okay.
Certainly, I can read that for you. So this is a resolution of the Council of the City of Bowie, Maryland, creating an ice arena and recreation facility task force. Whereas the Council of the City of Bowie wishes to create a task force to assist it with issues relating to the city's ice arena facility. And whereas the purpose of this task force is to advise council and provide perspective to the City Council as the body considers proposals submitted by third-party entities for the repair and operation of the city's ice arena. Now therefore be it resolved by the Council of the City of Bowie, Maryland, that the formation of an ice arena and recreation facility task force is hereby created as follows. Membership. Number 1, membership. The task force shall be composed of 5 City of Bowie residents, of whom A, 1 member must be a member of the Community Recreation Committee. B, 1 member must be a community advocate for the Bowie Ice Arena. C, at least 3 members must be users of the Bowie Ice Arena. Number 2, deadline. Not later than 30 days after the date of adoption of this resolution, the City Council shall appoint all members and designate the co-chairpersons of the task force. Number 3, period of appointment. Members shall be appointed for the duration of the existence of this task force, which shall continue until dissolved by the City Council. And then it's introduced and passed.
Thank you, Assistant City Manager. Estev, would you like to comment at this time?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate you reading that, Dan. So my colleagues can jump in if I'm misunderstanding anything, just kind of summarizing where we are right now. It sounds like, having reviewed the applications we received for the PPP, the direction that council seems to be kind of moving in is that, we are contemplating that it would be better for the city to maintain control of the ice arena, and that the next step would be for us to assess what specific capital improvements need to be made, their costs, and begin planning to put those various needs into action. As I envision it, this task force, which is designed to be made up of users of the ice arena to ensure kind of maximum public input from the groups most impacted by what goes on at the rink, their mission, as I see it at this stage, would be to assist us in kind of leading the effort to bring together the relevant decision makers and begin contemplating what those capital costs would be, what the priorities would be for making improvements to the rink, and beginning to kind of lay out a plan for how to proceed next. I envision their work probably would not take particularly long, as obviously there is some urgency with some of the items at the rink getting fairly old and probably being in need of repair fairly soon. But that's kind of a summary of where I think we are now and how we want to proceed. And I welcome my colleagues to jump in and offer feedback.
Correct. Councilwoman Harrison, any comments?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I just have a few comments. And since it looks like we are moving forward with city staff's recommendation, I'm kind of in agreement with the resolution, but I feel like it's still a slap face to the Bowie ice community. And I feel like we're placating the residents because it's really too late to do this. But if we're going to move forward with this, then in addition to the members, I think we should also include we have 92 years, I believe, of collective experience of the employees at the ice arena. So I would love to get their input as well as members of this task force. Just a suggestion. And also, I don't know who the creator of this resolution was. So it would be nice to find that out, who created this, and also why the title is ICE creating a resolution of the Council of the City of Bowie, Maryland, creating an ice arena and recreation facility task force. What does the recreation facility pertain to, and how come that's not included in the overall resolution? I'm just wondering what the thought process was behind that.
So, Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Mayor, I'll take that question. Michael, you got it, or?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in.
Go ahead.
All right, so Councilwoman Harrison, so the task force was an idea that was brought up by a combination of ice rink advocates themselves that I thought was a good idea. It was brought up to Councilman Boafo as well, who also agreed with the concept. And I think originally, if I understand correctly, and the Mayor Pro Tem can tell me if I'm misunderstanding, I think originally the idea is that before we saw what the applicants for the PPP were showing us, the idea was to simply ensure that we had a group dedicated to the users of the facility who would help us vet the applications themselves. Staff has already done that, and it sounds like there aren't any significant objections to staff's recommendation. So at this point, in that respect, the task force wouldn't really need to exist, since it sounds like we're really not going to go with the applications we received. Originally, the task force would have been helping to vet those, the ice community's perspective. At this stage, I still think it would be a good idea to continue having them, but just more in the capacity of helping to bring together the relevant stakeholders, decision makers. You brought up, I think absolutely correctly, city personnel at the rink, who are definitely our best experts in moving forward, and just making sure that we have kind of a community-assisted and led effort in moving forward with the rink. And someone can jump in if I'm misunderstanding something.
Thank you, Councilmember Esteve. And based on what you all have here in the resolution, I don't understand why this was drawn up even without consulting other members of the council. Seems like it was just a couple of you guys that put this together and then put it on the agenda. And now, we're just kind of seeing it just before the meeting. We had no real input into it until we get to the meeting. So I just want to understand that as well.
I'll take that, Michael. Thank you for your comments, Councilwoman Harrison. To answer your question, this was brought up to us by individual residents who emailed us individually, and we spoke to them off and on. And maybe this, Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, but this was a process that we were going through for a month. So this isn't something you're just seeing for the first time, because the packet went out Thursday. But this is something that we think is really important as we move forward with exploring keeping the ice rink here in Bowie control.
And I understand what you're saying, Mayor Pro Tem Boafo. The packet went out on Thursday, but other members of the council did not have any input into this resolution. And it seems like that's kind of you guys' MO with a lot of these resolutions. They get into the packet without any other council member input, just stating that fact.
Well, with all due respect, Councilwoman, this is the legislative body, and this is the moment in which we can amend this resolution. So I implore you to amend if there's any additions or subtractions that you want to make. Again, our intention here is to make sure that the ICE advocates have the opportunity to be a part of this process in a more intimate way than they have been before.
Right. Well, it's really only being a part of the process of something that they have to be a part of the process now because they don't have the ICE facility that they really wanted. So like I said, it's still a slap in the face to the ICE community, but I'm glad to see that you all do kind of want to hear from them now, even though it's really too late. But it's great that you kind of want to hear from them. I don't believe it's genuine, but I'm hopeful that we get some people that are on this task force, if you all choose to proceed with this, that will definitely add value, and you guys will listen to their comments as opposed to throw them away. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Harrison, but also thank you, Councilman Esteve and Councilman Boafo, for putting this together and having it on the agenda so that we can have a discussion. Do any of the other council members comments at this time?
Yes, this is Councilman Wolfley.
Yes, go, Councilman Wolfley.
Couple comments and proposals for modifications to what we're looking at here. First of all, I think it's a fine idea to get people who are involved in the ICE community to play a role in the effort. A couple of comments that I would like to make. The first is, I don't think it's a perpetual need. I do think that this really does set up, it ties in with what the city manager was speaking to earlier about a CIP program, about what things need to look like, what the plan in the future might look like, and I think it would be good to have the ICE community involved in that. That having been said, I don't think it takes multiple years to do that, and I would think that we could probably put a term on this to incite some closure, which would be maybe set up for a year. So that we can get people's input, come and put an action plan together, and have a path forward. But I don't think we need one to be a perpetual oversight for that. I do think someone's prior comment, it may have been Councilwoman Harrison's, about the recreational facility task force. I think that probably just come out of the title, just because I think it makes sense that it's all about the ice arena and that community, making sure they're involved. 5 people, I think that's great. I think just as kind of a word of the wise, as a council, we need to do a better job of appointing people. So I think we need to expedite that, and hopefully people have some ideas already in their minds of who should participate. Staff membership, I think, is an excellent idea, and I think we ought to move to include that. And I do think the agenda item of, or the purpose of reviewing the work of city staff on reviewing the proposals so far is probably overtaken by events. I think we've got, response back. And unless I'm misreading, I don't see too much interest in the user community for advocating for PPP to begin with. There may be some, Councilwoman Ndebumadu has said that she has received some, so there may be some out there. But I would like to think with those modifications that we have something that works well, and that going back to the prior item that we discussed on this evening's agenda, that what we might then do is table the prior item until such time as the committee has had a chance to review and validate the going-in assumption that the community is not interested, and give them the opportunity to validate that sense that we have. And that would allow them for the opportunity to, in fact, voice the consistent concern about it, or speak up and say that, yes, we ought to delve into it and ask for more details or pursue some more, discussions with the proposers from the RFP that we had. So I guess I would say that those are my things. Just make those minor adjustments. And then I would say we table the prior item until this committee has had a chance to review it, and then have the committee work in concert with staff to put together an action plan. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other comments?
Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to clarify one thing.
Yes, go ahead, Councilwoman.
So I just want to clarify one thing, because I feel it sounds like my words are being misconstrued or miscommunicated. What I am saying is that I think that I'm by no means suggesting that we move forward with the PPP. What I am saying is that I would like to learn more information and hear more information from city staff on us moving forward with their recommendation. So I just want to clarify that. The second thing that I also want to clarify is based off of my comment in terms of resident involvement, because this is a separate decision that is different from the decision that we made a couple of weeks ago, I would like to see continued resident involvement, which we are already seeing. So what I'm doing is essentially just saying, I am happy that the community is involved on both sides, everybody who feels differently or feels however they feel, and I'd like to see that continue. So I just want to make sure I clarify that, because it sounds like there's a miscommunication or people are trying to misinterpret what I'm actually saying. So thank you.
Okay. If I could at this point, I think what we'll need to do is, number one, probably best that we look at this resolution, the RFP review, and see if we want to simply table that portion at this time, go back and table that, or do we want to, and we have Section D, where we probably need to make a motion for those amendments to it, and those amendments that are potential amendments. Let me say that, because nothing has been formally done. But I thought I heard council members saying they would like to change that such that we take out the recreation facility task force in the title, and that we also include a staff member potentially from the ice arena. Now, did I miss anything on that, Councilman?
Mr. Mayor, I do.
You said some things. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's okay. To what you're speaking about, I think we should address the first resolution that's on the floor. And it sounds like I really don't see a need to table it, since it seems that most of us are in agreement that we want to move forward with city staff recommendations. So I think we need to move forward, either decline or accept it. So we should move forward with the first resolution, and then we can address the task force resolution.
I think part of what I heard, though, is that there may be some interest in us going back and getting some more information when it comes to the RFP, when it comes to costs potentially, how we're looking at that, how staff is looking at that, even from a standpoint of from the CIP and other things, that we may want to get more information. I think.
Right. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I think the woman, the councilwoman from District 4 was saying she'd still like to be able to go back and look at additional information on that. So
for discounting what the staff is recommending, I don't understand. And you're saying you want more information on the RFPs?
Mr. Mayor, if I could ask a quick question of staff to perhaps clarify what we're discussing.
Hey, Mike, before you do that, can I just, because this evening, I don't really don't want my words being misconstrued, because I think I'm speaking very clearly. What I'm saying is there's a gap in the numbers that are being presented on both sides. So I'd like to understand the numbers, is specifically what I said, quote unquote.
A gap in what numbers?
A gap. Sorry, go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
I think when she was talking about the gap of what some of the historical numbers that were presented by the city versus the numbers that we're getting in from these current proposals, and wanting to see what that gap is and closing that, and just getting additional information. Am I correct in stating that, Councilwoman from District 4?
Yeah, I think that's an answer for city staff, but they clearly said when Mayor Pro Tem Boafo asked initially, they said they didn't have the answer for that this evening. So that is what I'm trying to understand, which I think a lot of us are trying to understand on this line today, is that we'd like to understand the gap in the numbers.
Okay, okay, Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry. Can I just ask city staff, would that really make a difference in your recommendation? Just ask, city staff, whoever can address.
No, that wouldn't make a difference in the recommendation at all in regards to what the cost is associated with it. Ultimately, what we have is we have an estimate that was prepared that would be fine for going ahead and doing some budgeting. With repairs that we need to make them. And these are of a significant amount where we would go out to bid for these repairs and maintenance items, whatever's deemed necessary to be done. When we got the proposals back, we would have the costs associated with that, and that would be ideally the time where we got the best price for that work, and that would be the one that we would recommend to the city council to undertake. So the estimates that we have, we really prepare for the purposes of budgeting, but for many things that the city does, we have to do them regardless of whether or not there is a high cost or a low cost associated with them, and we use the market forces to get the best prices for the work that we're trying to do.
Right, thank you. So you would still advise us to not move forward with either of the organizations that submitted the RFP or the response to the RFP?
With the request of each of the proposals to have the city participate either in a 33% capacity or for 50% capacity for the cost of the capital associated with the projects, it doesn't matter if it was for $2 million or $5 million or 10 million. Either of those numbers would not be the recommendation of staff to participate in a public-private partnership.
Thank you. That makes my point. I appreciate it.
Okay, and so.
Mr. Mayor, may I make a motion?
Yes.
Thank you. I'd like to propose that we adopt Resolution R54-20 with the following amendments. Changing the period for to 1 year appointments in the existence of the task force for 1 year, to delete recreational facilities from the title, to add one staff member to the proposed committee, and at the same time to clarify the discussion that at the same time that we reject the reject the proposals that we have received and follow staff recommendation that we pursue the ice arena improvements using city staff.
Second.
I am not sure that we can include the item C in this amendment. Or city council, city attorney, can we do that? Because we had already moved off from there. Is that something we can incorporate together?
Am I unmuted? I'm sorry. I think that you can. I mean, it will depend on whether or not you can get the votes for it.
One more time, you broke up on me. I apologize. I can hear you.
I'm sorry, can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
I do now, yes.
Sorry. Yeah, no, I think you can do it. I mean, the trouble when you merge two items is if you get a down vote, then you have to go back and take them apart. But
Exactly. Okay. It's been moved and properly second that we remove the recreational facility task force wording from the adoption of resolution R5420, that we accept the addition of a city staff from the ice arena to be a part of the ice arena task force, for lack of a better way to put it right now, and that we vote down the acceptance of any of the proposals that we received regarding the public-private partnership. Is that correct?
With one omission, we're going to limit it to a one-year period for the committee.
With a one-year limit for the committee. Did I cover everything you wanted in your motion?
I think that covers it.
Councilman?
Question on the motion, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
I agree with all the proposed amendments that Councilman Wolfley suggested. We may also want to just clarify regarding the process to the committee that we would follow the same appointment process we use for all city committees and task forces, which is interested applicants submit relevant standard information to the city clerk, who forwards that information to us. Council will conduct interviews swiftly, and we will then fill the committee, as we do with all of our committees. I think staff would probably need us to include those directions in there. Am I right?
That sounds like a great idea, and I certainly would accept that amendment.
Yes, we certainly need that.
You accept that friendly amendment?
You bet.
Okay. Does that amendment need to be seconded again?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved, properly second, open for discussion. Any additional discussion at this time?
Mr. Mayor,
Hearing any, call for the vote.
Mr. Mayor, I request a roll call vote, please.
Okay, we will have a roll call vote. City Clerk, could you do the roll call vote, please?
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember Ndebumalo. Councilmember Ndebumalo. Did we lose her? Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Boffel.
Yes.
Councilmember Wolfley,
Aye.
Councilmember Steph,
Aye.
Councilmember Harrison,
Aye.
Mayor Adams,
Aye.
Councilmember Ndebumadu, are you back on?
Yeah, sorry, my internet went out really quickly. Aye.
Okay. So the ayes have it. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ayes.
Okay. Thank you. Motion carries.
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilmember Harrison. Can I just make one comment? I didn't, would you mind if I make one comment?
No, please go ahead.
Okay, I just wanted to mention that Councilmember Henri Gardner could not make it tonight because he had to help a sick neighbor and get her to the hospital. She didn't have any family members to come right away, so he is at the hospital with her. So I did want to make sure the residents were aware of that, and that's why he's not here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. All right. We move on to the Bowie Youth Council. I will turn that over to city staff.
This is, Mr. Mayor, I think this proposal has not come from us in particular. I think Councilwoman Harrison sent a document. Ma'am, would you like to comment on this?
Sure, thank you. Yes, Mr. Mayor, I sent an updated proposal to the council staff, to the staff, city staff, and to the council members and yourself this afternoon. And it's just kind of adding additional information to something that was proposed by one of our constituents, Tamika Washington. And she put together a document, and I just added some things to it and wanted you all to take a look at that to kind of guide our discussion on how we may want to move forward in incorporating a youth council, either as a separate entity on itself or included in the diversity committee. So this just kind of gives you kind of a skeleton overview of what the Bowie Youth Council would do. And the purpose would be to provide an opportunity for Bowie youth to learn about local government, have a voice on the city council. In addition, it will provide an opportunity for the group to influence policy, provide positive leadership and service, and engage the community. The Bowie Youth Council is designed to support youth development and leadership and not merely participation. So the goal really would be to provide a framework of sustainable leadership that draws from and gives back to the community by supporting our youth and allowing them to positively impact the community. They would work directly with us, inform the Bowie City Council on matters affecting youth and their families, take on meaningful roles in addressing important issues, educate the youth on political issues, and certainly be respected by us on their issues. We kind of outlined what the membership would be, and basically it would represent a cross-section of the city, and each district would have a minimum of 2 representatives. So, and it would consist of youth in grade levels 6 through 12. So what I'm recommending here, which is in addition to what Ms. Washington put together, is that the city council would appoint 4 members of the youth council, and the remaining members would be selected by the youth council members themselves, supporting by youth for youth. Of course, they would have a chairperson, a vice chair, recording secretary, and treasurer. The chair would be a person that's in high school. The terms are 1-year terms. They can reapply annually if they like. They must be residents of the city and the district they represent. 10 meetings on a regular basis, maintain a certain grade point average, and fulfill the responsibilities of the office held. And then it goes into their responsibilities, but primarily They would be responsible for any policy matters affecting youth, to bring that to us to share, to provide specific information on any youth jobs, social issues, voter registration drives, and any youth events that encourage frank discussions on race and social justice reforms. They would report to us bi-monthly, given an opportunity to sit in on other city committees, and certainly bring forth any issues of concern of their respective districts. There would be youth council advisors. We recommend 2 youth council advisors, adults, either appointed by us or recommended from the diversity committee, however we see we want to place this particular group. 1 advisor would be attendance at all the meetings and would assist them and guide them as needed. The youth council would meet monthly, starting in September. And if they needed any funding, we would talk about that. Any funding would go towards event costs for a youth summit or community engagement events, any training or leadership development for youth council members, and then I put forward an application process for your consideration as well. So that's just kind of an overview of the document for your consideration.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
Councilwoman. And I think,
Mayor?
yes.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Go ahead. I apologize. I got ahead of you there, Mr. Mayor. Go ahead.
No, go right ahead, Councilmember Estelle.
I was just going to suggest, if we could, I'm prepared to move that we have staff take the document that was shared with them and have it formally introduced as a resolution at our next meeting, so that we can formally vote on it in resolution form.
Okay, that's a good suggestion. Any other comments or thoughts from any of the other council members?
Just point of clarification here. City staff, is there a document attached that was sent out in packet?
No, the staff did not have anything at the time of the agenda.
Got it, thank you.
Yeah, I sent it out, Councilmember Waffle, I sent it out today based on the fact that we were having a discussion. So I wanted to have a document for us to take a look at and for your consideration in, making any edits or anything like that before we move forward to anything formal. So this is just a discussion piece.
Okay. So I think what I'm hearing from you is that really council members should take a moment, review it, give it some thought, and get some comments back on what we'd like to see in it.
That'd be great. And then we can certainly put that into a resolution once all of us have, put our input into it.
Okay, thank you. Are you okay with that, Councilmember Estelle?
Totally consistent with what I'm proposing, absolutely.
Okay. All right, thank you, everyone. Thank you on that.
Mr. Mayor, are we pushing the discussion on this conversation back until the resolution is introduced?
Yes, we're pushing the conversation, unless you have some comments you'd like to make now. I personally have not had a chance to really study it. And so if you have some comments or questions, please feel free.
So first of all, I want to say thanks to Tamika Washington for honestly putting this together and bringing the idea forth to the council. She has been so diligent in all of the things that she's doing with the interfaith community and the youth here in Bowie. So I am so proud of her and her children for kind of taking the lead on this and working with Councilman Esteve to introduce it to the council. So I just want to make sure that we give a shout out to her for all of her hard work. The only thing that I wanted to add is if we could take a look at changing, I know there's a GPA requirement that the youth council members maintain of 2.3. I'd like to see if we could possibly entertain a discussion whenever, either today or during the next council meeting, if that could be a 2.5, just to make sure that that's consistent with, what colleges are looking at and, what companies are looking at when you're going to, apply for jobs. There is a minimum GPA requirement that a lot of these institutions as well as companies are looking at. So I'd like to see if we can make that consistent across the board so that these youth and these students can have something to aspire towards. And, perhaps we could, maybe create some sort of condition that if you are on a 2.3 that you have to be working towards a 2.5. You might need to get there in a semester or within a school year for you to maintain your spot on the youth council or something like that, just to make sure that we're staying consistent across the board. Thank you.
Yeah, and actually, Councilmember Ndebamadu, she did, Tamika had it at 2.5, and I changed it only because I feel like I want to, some kids may not, their GPA may not reflect how intelligent they are. And I want to give an opportunity to all to be able to participate and not be very restricted to, either an A or B average, that, C students could also participate. And like I said, it's not a reflection of their intelligence, but as far as their GPA is concerned. So I just tried not to make it too restrictive to that end, because I wanted to make it more inclusive.
Sounds good. Makes sense. Just want to put out there that currently a 2.5 GPA is a C average. So understood, but.
No, I get it, but not in all cases, but you're right. And that's why I wanted to lower it because of what I just mentioned.
Yeah, perhaps we could just add a stipulation that they, would need to work towards a 2.5 just to make it consistent for when they're applying to college and applying to work in the workforce. Thanks.
You're muted, sir. We can't hear you.
Not coming through. As I was saying, I think that gives us another one of those things to look at in the document and kind of give different inputs and from different members of the council. Thank you so very much for that. All right. I guess moving on to item F, racism. I'd like to make a couple of comments here, and I ask my city and council to bear with me as we do this. There have been some documents we've been looking at trying to do, and basically addressing the issue of Black Lives Matter, and wanting to make sure that we're very fortunate, for example, with our police department, and that a lot of the things that we are currently doing in our policies and procedures within the Bowie Police Department is being held up nationally as an example of how it should be done and what things we should be doing. I think one of the things that we want to do is make sure that we as a city, that we support our police department, and we support what they've put into their policies and procedures. And having talked with them, we want to make sure that we represent our city to show that not just our police department is putting into place those things that make sure that Black Lives Matter and that we stop police brutality and other issues, but that we as a city support that as well, and that we codify that and show the nation and others that we as a city believe the same thing, that we're a city that's filled with love and compassion for all of our citizens, that we're a city that shows that diversity works and that we can support each other and move forward. So I think a question was read, a comment was made, and I hope that we as a council move forward with that and making sure that we as a city, that we represent our citizens and that we make sure that they all understand that we as a city love each other, that we have compassion for each other, and the overwhelmingly vast majority of our citizens agree that Black Lives Matter. So, having said that, I think that that's one of the first steps we can do, I believe, is to codify that, to make sure that we do that for the city, that it's not just based upon having a good police chief and good police officers, but that everyone understand that we as a city support that belief and that position. At this point, I'll open it up to other comments from others, please.
Mr. Mayor, if I could add a few comments.
Please go ahead.
Thank you, sir.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, sir. A couple things. I want to first off say last week here at City Hall, the PG Changemakers and the LGBT Dignity Project came together for a really good protest and rally with school board member Rahila and myself. And it was a really productive time, a really great time to see a lot of Bowie families, a great amount of diversity of folks. And as everyone knows, in District 3, we had this incident that happened regarding vandalism on a resident's car. I do want to say this, as we have this discussion, let it not be forgotten that this is an ongoing discussion, right? This won't be a discussion that we just have for these coming months, as this is a hot topic nationally, but as we continue to progress as a city and as a council, we should continuously be aware of what we're doing, both internally and what we're reflecting externally. As you guys know, on the Hill, there's a lot of things going on, especially the Justice and Policing Act, which really focuses on how, from a federal standpoint, policing can be handled. The one thing I do want to encourage every single member to do, and I did this maybe 2 weeks ago, is I sat down with our police chief and our deputy police chief and went through some of the Campaign Zero things that I thought were going to be great for the city of Bowie, and the 8 Can't Wait, and some of the stuff that we can do. I do also think it'll be appropriate to have them here in council chambers for those questions to be asked as well, so that citizens know where we stand on some of this stuff. Well, we're doing as well in some areas, and obviously there are continuous improvements that we can be making as well as we go through this accreditation process. I really do think it's important for residents to understand what that means when it comes to the policies of our city, and how we move in that manner. But I do want to encourage every single member that as we go through this process, let's make sure that we're not just having this conversation over the next 2 months, as this is a national topic, but that we're also having this in the years to come and in the decades to come to ensure that Black lives do truly matter. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Would someone else like to comment at this time?
Hi, Mr. Mayor.
Go right ahead.
I just echoing the comments of all of my colleagues that were previously mentioned, yourself and Mayor Pro Tem Boafo, as well as I'm just really acknowledging all of the members of the council who have been involved in supporting the community, both mentally, emotionally, and kind of physically during this time, and really setting that example that Bowie is a certain type of community that is forward moving and that does stand up for injustices and against police brutality, and we are that type of community, and acknowledging that we are very fortunate with our police department and the way that it's operating with a great leader, Chief Neske, who's doing a wonderful job. So I just want to commend all of my council members for the way that they've stepped up and been there for the community. I think last week when, we all saw kind of the example of what happened in District 3 that Mayor Pro Tem just spoke about, it really showcased, kind of the times that we're living in and what's really going out in the world and how some people truly feel, and how Bowie is not a community that tolerates those types of actions, and how we will be taking steps to move forward. So it was important. I shared a document about 2 weeks ago, and when I placed this topic on the agenda for this evening, and there were a couple of points that I made in there that I wanted to just kind of bring up tonight, because I think that a lot of these comments have came from residents as well as city staff. So I just want to make sure that we, kind of discuss that. You've already discussed the youth council that we spoke about earlier today that, Councilman Esteve and Councilwoman Harrison have been doing a phenomenal job on. But also, there are a couple other points that I want to address on. And what I'd like to see personally as a council member, one, being and things that have been shared from the residents as well as city staff. One, I'd like to see, along with the youth council, and we're already kind of doing that, but just, a commitment. And I think Councilmember Gardner has been working on this to create more opportunities for children here in our city, because, this is a topic that they are facing. There is a lot of, racial injustices that happen out there. So I want to make sure that here in the city of Bowie, we are equipping the youth as much as possible with just kind of everything to get engaged and, better themselves so that they can rise above instances like this. So that's one. Secondly, there was a comment that was made not directly from the whole of city staff, but a member of city staff suggesting an establishment of observing June 19th as a paid holiday to replace November 26th as a current paid holiday, or the option, which, if that is going to cost us too much in terms of dollars, or if that's going to cost dollars at all. I think Mr. Matthews shared with me about a week ago what that estimate, or no, City Manager Outlot shared with me that estimate, possibly looking at observing that day for city staff to gather and, yes, come to work, but also engage in conversations, enlightening them of the history of things that, of how we even got here to June 19th and things like that. So going through the necessary training and just creating a space for more learning and diverse discussions so that we are moving forward as a city. So I think that is one topic that has been brought up, or one point that has been brought up by city staff that I think we should take a greater look at. And I think the rest of the comments that I shared, of course, we are all committed to collaborating with local communities to find more ways to, counter systematic injustices. So I know that we are all already committed to that, as well as continuing to promote racial equity through all of our policies, and educating our staff on how racism can affect healthcare, the delivery of human and social services, economic development, and public safety. So I think those are things that we're already working on. But I think the broader piece that we probably haven't discussed is the potential of, observing June 19th either as a paid holiday or a non-paid holiday, or reserving it as, a day where we just engage city staff in a day of learning and also observe it as a non-paid holiday. So I'd love to hear my council members' thoughts on, anything that I just mentioned. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you so much, Council. Would anyone like to comment at this time? Council members?
Mr. Mayor, I'll just jump in real quick and say just how incredibly proud I am of the whole community, all of my colleagues, for really coming together in this incredibly challenging and unusual time. I think I speak for all of us when I say that it really does feel like this 6-month term on the council has been a 6-year term, starting with, all the immediate political issues we faced in January, to the pandemic, and then the recurring national tragedies related to the deaths of unarmed Black civilians at the hands of law enforcement, the vigils, the meetings, the events, the pandemic still continuing, all the economic fallout. It has been, more than enough, I think, for everyone in the community, including those who are in positions of leadership. And so I just really want to commend everybody, in particular city staff, who have been really great working with community members and activists, faith leaders, and council colleagues, as we have thrown quite a lot at them in the last few weeks, organizing more events, definitely getting our money's worth out of that Zoom meeting application that Mr. Peterson runs, and also you, Mr. Mayor, and the personal tragedy that your family faced. This has been a lot, and we're all in this together. We can disagree, but we are at the end of the day all in this together as fellow Bowieites, as fellow human beings. And I'm just so incredibly proud of this community for standing together in the face of so many challenges, and hope that we can continue to do that moving forward.
Thank you so very much, and eloquently put, Councilmember SF. Anyone else would like to make a comment at this time?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, just briefly, just kind of definitely want to sign on to what everyone else has said, and just so appreciate the community and us coming together peacefully. We've had some very poignant vigils and gatherings to express our concerns and the outcry from the community on what has happened, and especially now during this pandemic. I certainly salute all of you, all my colleagues, Mr. Mayor, but most of all the community, and certainly our own police department. They are so willing to, and have been, having open and transparent conversations on all fronts with us. And I've participated in the Public Safety Committee discussion. I'm actually the liaison to the Public Safety Committee, and it was a great meeting. I mean, they have really been doing some wonderful things. Our Deputy Chief expressed some great recommendations on how to engage the community further. And so I certainly welcome them, and will make the recommendation to them that certainly, I think I heard someone else say that they could come to our council meetings and talk to the community more about what they're doing, because I think everyone needs to hear exactly what's going on. I think Mayor Pro Tem Boafo mentioned this about the accreditation. So, you know, open, transparent communication with the community, the council, and certainly our FOP is on board as well. So I'm just so proud of the city, and I'm proud of our efforts, and I look forward to us continuing to address any racial inequities that we find, and stamping those out, and working together as a community. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilman Wolfley. Just wanted to chime in as well.
Yes,
Thank you. And reflect in the same manner as everyone else has in terms of agreement. But also, I just want to make a special emphasis on the police force, who has gone to a significant effort to be transparent and to be open to dialogue when a lot of organizations may have just been defensive in just kind of the concern, and overall the community had done a fantastic job, and I think staff has done a great job as well, responding to a number of opportunities that we have had to engage with the community. I think it's just been absolutely fantastic, the responses that we've seen in the community, the people who've participated, and the dialogue that this has brought to the community as a whole. So I think this is, you know, it's obviously a circumstances one never cares to see, but the response to it, to the current situations, has been fantastic within our community. And my colleagues here, I want to, you know, say thank you to everybody. I think it's a remarkable testament to a remarkable city. And one of the things I want to point out is that we shouldn't overlook the hard work that the Diversity Committee has done over the years. They have been at the fore for this community. You know, back in the day when these sorts of issues first started coming up. And it's really a testament to the committee of their work, and it's a testament to the community, their response to the efforts that the Diversity Committee has engaged in over the years to really reinforce and bring people together across the community. So I think it's really encouraging to see what we have seen, you know, transpiring here in the city. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, Councilman.
Mr. Mayor.
Mayor, speaking of what Mr. Member Dufour just said, I think the chair of the Diversity Committee on the Zoom call, I mean on the Teams call, so just wanted to recognize her and say thank you as well. So thank you.
We all say thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Yes.
I'd like to comment a little bit about our police department. This is the fourth city this is the fourth city I've worked in where I had to manage and work with police departments. Bowie's police department is the most diverse group of people that I've ever seen. There are more brown people, black people, Asians, Hispanics. We have we have outstanding female leaders and police officers, and this is something that I inherited. I wish I could take credit for it, but the previous management, and including Chief Nesky and his team, had done an outstanding job of doing that. As a matter of fact, the CALEA interviewer, who was a seasoned police officer from up north someplace, he was thoroughly impressed by how representative our police department is of our community. Also, I can state unequivocally that this police department, they are experts at community policing. Shop with a cop, be a cop for a day, coffee with a cop, Christmas toys. They are completely immersed with this community. That's why it was so seamless for them to work with all the protesters who have taken up issue of this 250-year-old issue in this country. They're great with constituents. There's a great relationship between the leadership, myself, and the Fraternal Order of Police. We just negotiated a contract last year that in my opinion, guarantees that we have a stabilized police department for at least 5 years, because we have to compete for police officers with these other people like Greenbelt and those guys. The surrounding police departments, our guys have a great reputation and working relationship with surrounding police departments in the state of Maryland, and particularly Prince George's County. You may not know it, but when our people go to the police academy, they go to the Prince George's County Police Academy for no charge. That's unheard of. That should be a $30,000 experience, but that's a great effort. And finally, I've been pulled over a few times in my life, probably 26, 27 times. In most cases, I was speeding or doing something when I was a young fella. And I was pulled over in Bowie, and it was the nicest experience I ever had about 7 years ago by a police officer. And I had made a right turn. I didn't see the no right turn sign, and the officer came up and trained me and informed me. And I left with a very pleasant experience. Well, of course I was living here, but so our police department and many of our departments are all doing well, but our police department is a model police department in this state. Thank you very much.
Thank you, City Manager, and I think I have to echo that because I am fortunate enough to be able to talk with our members of our police force often, as well as the FOP, and I know and I appreciate all that they do. As I've said before, I come from a family of men and women who have served in uniform, i.e. police officers. My father, my brothers, my nieces, my nephews. And the one thing we all talk about is they're the ones who run to problems when most people run away. But I do say that we do have a unique experience here. But I believe that our police department is a great representation of what it should be. And I hope that that reflects our city, because our city, I hope, represents what a good, diverse city should be as well. So on those comments, are there any other things we need to address at this moment?
Mr. Mayor, I move to adjourn.
Seconded, Mr. Mayor.
It's been moved and properly second, and thank you all so very, very much. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hey, I would like to say again to the city staff, to everyone who participated this evening, citizens, fellow council members, thank you all so very much. And please stay safe because we are still in the middle of this pandemic. And yes, I will say again, and we all need to support the idea and reinforce that Black Lives Matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Have a good night.
You too.